Everybody, Dr. Marty here. We've been working through review of Chapter 2 or Unit 2 of Algebra. And last time we talked a bit about proportions, and now we're moving on to percents. Now, I know that this is a topic that can be a little bit confusing, and so I'm going to try to show it to you in a way that's as straightforward as possible. First of all, we've been talking about ratios, right, and proportions, and we know that a percent is a ratio that compares a number to 100. Per means divided by, right? And cent, think about 1 cent, cent or century is 100, okay? So this is per 100, okay? So per 100, right? Miles per gallon, something per 100. So percent essentially equals x over 100, all right? Now, essentially, a percent is just a ratio, right? So something to 100. And sometimes you see percents as proportions. Remember, a proportion is an equation that compares two ratios or sets two ratios equal to each other. All right, so let's start with looking at these examples and see if we can clarify some of the ways in which we might have to solve equations using percents. Well, what percent of 70 is 21? What percent of 70 is 21? Okay, now you could just type that into a calculator, right? But let me show you how to set it up. So percent, what percent? So what is going to be our variable? I'm going to put an x there. Okay, percent divided by 100. So x divided by 100, percent, what percent? We're trying to find the percent of 70 is 21. Now, of 70, so 70 is what we're going to be having on our denominator is 21, right? So we're trying to find what percentage of 70 equals 21, or x over 100 equals 21 over 70. Now remember how to solve these? We use cross multiplication. So we get 70x equals 21 times 100, or 70x equals 2,100 divided by 70. These cancel, we get x equals 30%. Okay? X, if anytime you see a problem that says what percent of a number, you're going to have x over 100. And then of the numbers on the bottom is going to be on the top. Okay? So let's look at example 2. What percent of 120 is 90? What percent of 120 is 90? X over 100 equals 90 over 120. Cross multiply, we get 120x equals 90 times 100, or 9,000. Okay, 90 times 100, or 9,000. To solve for x, we're going to divide both sides by what? 120. Cross it out. X equals 9,000 divided by 120. Now, if we check the calculator, 9,000 divided by 120 equals 75. Okay, it's going to be 75%, or 3/4. Now, if I just look at this, 90 out of 120, right, divided by 30s, there's 4 30s. You're going to see 90 over 120 is going to be 75%, but that's the way that you would solve it using proportions. Okay, now, this can get different. This can look different, okay? So instead of saying what percent of 70 is 21, now we might see something where we're given the percentage and we're trying to find it of a certain number. What is 35% of 80? Well, remember percent is 35 over 100. That's our percent, right? We're going to set that equal to some ratio. Well, it's what is 35% of 80, right? So we want remember the of 80 is going to be on the bottom. So our variable now, x, is going to be up here. Cross multiply. 35 times 80 equals 100x. 2,800 equals 100x divided by 100. And x equals 28. Now, this is not 28% because it's 35%. So 28 over 80 gives us 35%. Okay? Let's do another one. What is 70%, 70 over 100, equals of 50? 50 on the bottom, our variable on top. Cross multiply, we get 100x. Doesn't matter which way you write first, times 70 times 50, equals 70 times 50. 100x equals 70 times 50. 100x equals 70 times 50, which is 3,500, right? Divide by 100. X equals 35. Right? All right. Two more examples, because these are ones that have that can be tricky for students. It says 60 is 20% of what number? 60 is 20% of what number? Well, we know we're going to have 20%, 20 over 100. But this time it's 60 is 20% of what? Remember, what number is going to be the x? So it's of x. So we have x on the bottom this time and 60 on top. X on the bottom, 60 on top. Cross multiply. 20x equals 60 times 100. 20x equals 6,000 divided by 20. X equals what? Well, 6,000 divided by 20 gives us 300. $60 is 20% of 300. That makes sense, right? 20% is a fifth. A fifth of 300 is going to be 60. Okay. And then finally, example 6, 18 is 150% of what number? So 18 is 150%. Just because the percent is above 100 doesn't change it. We still have 150% or per 100 equals 18 is of what number? So it's of x. So x is on the bottom, 18 on top. Cross multiply. We get 150x equals 18 times 100. 150x equals 1,800. Divide by 150. And x equals 1,800. Whoops, sorry about that moving. Divided by 150, or 12, right? 18 is 150% of 12. That makes sense because half of 12, or 50%, is 6. 12 plus 6, or 150%, is going to be 18. All right, so that is how we might see percentages used. Percentages used as a ratio in a proportion, right? So we can use whatever information we're told to set up a proportion, and that can allow us to solve for whatever we're trying to solve for.